Welcome to Faith Fondue, a new podcast featuring me, author and speaker Haley DeMaria, and my good friend, teacher and blogger Ann Strickers. Faith Fondue will feature a melting pot of topics, ignited by a flame, our faith, and guided by the Holy Spirit. Each week we will feature a theme, and the theme for our first episode is gratitude, which is appropriate as we head into Thanksgiving week. And because I am so grateful to begin this podcast, to be able to share our faith, to share stories, and to be guided by the Holy Spirit as we inspire one another. Anne, welcome to our first week. I am really excited to start this with you.
Hi, Haley. I'm equally excited. This is inspirational, so that's going to be part of our conversation today. This is episode 1. This is the week of November 22nd, 2020. I am here in San Francisco, California, and Haley is in Annapolis, Maryland. It's earlier for me here than it is for her, but we wanted to begin by sharing how Faith Fondue came to be. Haley?
Yeah, I've recorded a couple of podcasts over the past several months, and every time I recorded them and they were shared, the feedback I would get from people who listened was, wow, you have a lot of stories to share, or gosh, I could have listened to you for a while longer. And I did always feel like there was more I would love to share, even on a daily basis. But I was really nervous about doing a podcast by myself because I wasn't sure I had enough in myself to share all the time. And so I was really thinking about, how do I do this? Who do I do it with? And then I was really fortunate enough to log on to a webinar with ND Women Connect that Anne was leading. And the webinar was great, but all I did was sit there and watch her lead the discussion. And I thought, Anne is my perfect partner. So I reached out to her, and Anne, I think it was something you'd been thinking about also.
Absolutely. I have a blog that I've been writing for the past 11 years. And when you have a social media presence like that, a lot of times people will say, well, have you thought about recording a podcast? And I'm a fan of many different podcasts. I read recently the majority of people who listen to podcasts are between the ages of 18 and 54. I certainly fall in that demographic. I probably listen to about 3 or 4 on a regular basis, but not one that will kind of include what we are aiming to talk about. So I love our title. It's called Faith Fondue. And as Haley gave in the description, it's a melting pot of ideas. One of my favorite images, Haley, was when you said, no politics, like Swiss cheese, we're neutral and we're equal opportunity prayers.
Yes.
So we just got off of Mass and where we were both able to pray together in our virtual setting. And so this is a special time to continue a conversation. So we thought we might share kind of the structure of our podcast. There will be 3 parts to Faith Fondue. Part 1 is the flame. We'll kind of talk about what's hot this week, and we will have a theme for each week of our podcast. Part 2 will be spiritual stew, the kind of the nourishment, the heart, the meat of our, or if it's not meat, what's the plant-based proteins?
Plant-based is good. Tofu, but I'm not going to eat that. So we'll stick with plant-based.
Okay. So our nourishment, really where our theme has connection to either the gospel, different articles, ideas that we have been encountering in the past week. And then we'll conclude it with the melting pot, which is the cheesy part of our story, or nuggets of inspiration, or I like to think about pieces of perspective. During this pandemic, I've really needed inspiration, and I've also looked for different perspectives on how we might see the world. So let's get started.
Great.
Let's unpack the fondue pot. I don't know if you grew up with one in your home, Haley. We were both born in the 70s. From what I understand, fondue was really popular in the 70s.
It was, but I actually did not partake in any sort of fondue until I was visiting Switzerland, and then I was hooked. So I'm all in on sharing, melting, and taking away.
Awesome. So yeah, there's a flame, like a sterno flame that's underneath the melting pot. I think some of the ingredients, depend on the those who are at the table. But yeah, let's ignite the flame. So let's talk about maybe, like we said, what's hot this week. Our theme is gratitude. Haley, I've noticed on social media you participated in an exercise called 30 Days of Gratitude, and you've been pretty faithful to it. Um, what has the experience been like?
So I have seen people do this in the past on social media, and usually I see that someone has started it through the month of November, and about 4 or 5 days in, I think, oh, I should do that. Because I really believe that, especially looking at the week of Thanksgiving, gratitude and giving thanks is not something we should be doing once a year on one day. I try to, sort of live life that way in a perpetual state of giving thanks. So I thought I can do this for a month. But I was always forgetting and never able to start the first day of the month in November. So I remembered this year. And, I will say one of the neatest things for me has been not necessarily trying to figure out what I want to write about, because I usually post in the evening, but going through my day, sometimes very simple tasks, like laundry or grocery shopping. It doesn't even have to be something meaningful, but something basic. But what I do is I find myself going through the day with the thought in the back of my mind of what am I going to post today. So it's actually been more than just a once a day writing about and posting what I'm grateful for, but it's really turned into going through every hour of the day, being very aware of what's in my life that I can be grateful for. And that makes it very easy to write about. I think one of the things that I've enjoyed about these 30 days is they're not monumental things. I mean, certainly on my anniversary, I wrote that I was grateful for my husband, and my son came home from college, so I was grateful that day for my children. So those are pretty big things, but it could be something as small as your favorite candy bar, or the little pieces of gratitude that I think build up to make just a very grateful way of life. So I've loved it because I think it's kept me in a state of really looking for what I'm grateful for every day.
Haley, part of it is you've been posting. So do you think that that act of writing it down and sharing with others has helped you to cultivate this, habit, or, really like live out the title, 30 Days of Gratitude?
Oh, for sure. I think anything we put out publicly keeps us accountable. It's one of the reasons that I wanted to post even on social media that we were starting this podcast, because I wanted to make sure that we really started it. But yes, I think, that social media has so many crazy sides to it, but, being able to share gratitude and being able to hold ourselves accountable for things is a great aspect of it. But yes, absolutely. When I know that I have to write something and post it and make sure that it's a meaningful to me post, for sure, writing has really helped.
Haley, you have a lot of friends, in particular on Facebook. Has anyone posted a response to any of your posts that delighted you, or in turn you might have been grateful for?
So yes, one of the things that I'm always amazed about, and I feel this way about my book all the time, is I'm always amazed that people read it. So I'm always amazed, when someone comments on my post, that means that they've read it. And it's a reminder that people really are watching what you write and say. My post on coffee got a lot of comments. That's sort of a simple thing that many of us are grateful for. And I think I had a late night the night before, and so that coffee just smelled and tasted so good. And I'm always cold, so holding it, I had commented on how just holding a cup of coffee sometimes, warms your hands and can warm your heart as well. So I think that was the post that surprised me the most in terms of the number of comments that I got. Because it was coffee. But boy, there are a lot of people who are grateful for coffee out there.
I agree. We'll be talking specifically during Lent, but every year, I do participate. I always give up something during Lent, and I aim to do something. But I have joked, I will never, I can say with confidence, I will never give up coffee. I don't think I'd be a better person, a better teacher, or a Christian if I gave that up. So that resonates with me.
Yes.
And as your friend, it's been fun to kind of see some of the posts that, are part of my life as well. Like you talked about a rival, like the you're grateful to have a rival. So
Right.
I think it was about the BC Notre Dame game,
Yes.
right? And you and I hold BC as a rival in a way that maybe some students, alumni from Notre Dame, do not. But a rival really is a gift. I tell my own students that because my high school didn't really have a rival, and at Notre Dame we had several rivals, right? But your rival reveals something to you about yourself, right? It makes you critical of who you are and whatnot. So that was fun to read.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, and I also thought congratulations on 20 years of marriage. I thought what was almost most profound about that post was the day of your anniversary when you think you're grateful for your husband. That was probably your shortest post, right? Just I'm thankful for Jamie every day, and I think that is so symbolic and meaningful that words might not capture, right? And we could try, but it was just in the frame of the 30 days to see that was really, I thought, really beautiful. So.
Thank you. I also think it was late at night, and I had to get it out there. And you're right. I could go on forever about a lot of the things I'm grateful there for, but it can all be summed up in just his name for sure.
Yeah. Well, I've always been intrigued because they say that studies show that grateful people are happy. And it's not the other way around, that happy people are grateful, though I'm sure they certainly are. Again, I'm going to repeat that grateful people are happy. And I think the idea is that gratitude really, if we practice gratitude, it yields delight, it yields satisfaction, it yields contentment. So there's like college courses now on the science of happiness. A lot of people write about happiness, but it comes back to some basic things, right? Just being grateful.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I've certainly found with this exercise that I've gone through is, and I say this all the time, when I speak or when I'm talking to people, we could all wake up every day, especially in the world we live in now, and find things about which to be unhappy. You could choose that every day, but I also really believe that we can wake up every day and find something about which to be grateful, and that's probably the biggest challenge and choice that we have when it comes to happiness is what are we going to focus on? Am I going to focus on the fact that, it's my legs are a little more stiff as I age getting out of bed in the morning? Or am I going to focus on the fact that, I can get out of bed in the morning and I can stand up. So you can look at the same thing and find something to either be grumpy about or something to really be happy and celebrate. And I do believe that. I think the more we can focus on those positives, and it's easier some days than others for sure. But the more we can focus on those positives, just the happier we train our brains to be. I know my boys might find that annoying sometimes because they've commented on, of course, Mom found the good in that. But it's
terrible mom to have.
Right. I do. Yeah. Well, sometimes. But for sure, I think it doesn't surprise me that there are studies about people who are grateful being happier.
Yeah. And it's almost like we zoom to that last part, pieces of perspective. But in light of that perspective, Haley, I've wondered, so you've talked about a discipline, a habit, a ritual that you've taken within, as a Catholic, within the Catholic Church. One of the sacraments is the Sacrament of Reconciliation. And Catholics are called to go regularly. I certainly go during Lent and Advent. I would like to avail myself to the sacrament more regularly. It's certainly available during, non-COVID time at my parish. And there's actually quite a culture of young and old people that will go to confession. I've seen this at St. Dominic's in San Francisco. And I've occasionally wondered, why do I need to go this week? What do I really have that I need to unburden and confess? And I've been told, I say this in the context of our conversation, because I've been told that when people practice gratitude, they actually find more to be grateful for. So I have wondered if I went to confession more regularly, would I find more that I need to confess? Would I possibly have more that I would need to reconcile? And I think I know the answer to that question.
So I love the idea that your parish has such a following and an active confession community, because I do think that's part of our faith and the church, that that maybe isn't as celebrated as the Eucharist or Mass, but certainly equally as important. But I think there's the fear that goes along with it, because nobody really likes to look at themselves and find their flaws or acknowledge their sins. I do think if we could make it more of a regular occurrence, it would be easier to do. But I've often found, myself in a situation where you might find yourself in sometimes where I think, well, what really do I have to confess? And then I think, okay, we should confess the fact that we think we have no sin. That is certainly not any of us. We all have things that we can confess, but I think part of that is it's really hard to look at yourself and acknowledge your flaws, and maybe look at the sins that build up over time that we're not really proud of. But what a gift and a grace it is when we're able to be absolved of those sins, and just to recognize that we're human. And the beautiful part of our church and our faith is that we do have confession. It really should be viewed as a beautiful gift, as opposed to a really hard reflection of acknowledging our sins.
Well, Haley, I think you've kind of answered my question, which, I write, and people say, why do you write so regularly? Because I think writing is hard, and the more you do it, it's not that it gets easier, but it's like you can get into that place. And so you talked about fear with confession, and I absolutely think that's true. And it's possible that if we went more regularly, maybe that fear would change into opportunity, right? And I am flawed, and I mess up, right? And God knows that, and maybe it's myself who needs to know that and grow in grace, and the ability to just be kind to yourself. I missed that. That was the wrong thing to say. That was not a good way to treat somebody. And just, be compassionate, because we talk about compassion and empathy with others, but we also need it with ourselves.
Yes, no, for sure. And I know we're going to dive deep into that a little bit more as we move through different episodes of our podcast, because as we were prepping for today and recording this, Ann and I could talk forever on so many topics. So we will compartmentalize and definitely get into, forgiveness is a really big, important theme in a future episode. But one of the things that I think in going back to, looking at all of this gratitude, confession is where do we find that? And in many ways it's the Mass. And for many of us, it might be a daily reading or a daily gospel reading. And, moving into this next part of our podcast with the spiritual stew and really the heart of what we want to share and where we find that. We oftentimes find that in Jesus's words himself, and what we read in the Bible or what we hear during Mass. And so part of what we'd like to do is just what really speaks to us when we are listening or hearing God's word. And, for me, the gospel this Monday on November 23rd, Luke 21, 1-4, is a story that, again, is very short, very simple, but very clear about the woman in the temple who gives her only 2 coins as her offering. And, there are more wealthy people who come in and give much more. But those really aren't the meaningful gifts that she has given. And I thought, what a great reading this week during Thanksgiving, when we are giving thanks, when we are looking for the blessings in our lives, when really everyone across the country, no matter what religion they are or not, are looking at being grateful and giving thanks. And it's a reminder for me that it is not the quantity of the gift, it is the quality of the gift, whether it's monetary or our time or in other ways or resources that we have. And that is my challenge, this week as I go through, what giving really looks like, is to make sure that it's a meaningful gift. Of myself or really of anything, and not just a showy gift. You get the impression in this reading that, there are these very wealthy men who walk in and they drop these very loud coins so that everyone knows what they've given, and to give humbly in a meaningful way. And again, the quality of our gifts and not necessarily the quantity. But I don't know, Anne, is there a reading or something that you heard this week that speaks to you?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I love that image, Elie, which is a meaningful gift. And I think that's actually a challenge too for all of us, is it might take time, or it might take prayer reflection to consider, what is meaningful to the other, to somebody that I really care about. So my brother had his 50th birthday on election day, and I was so, one of my favorite feelings is to give a meaningful gift. I mean, that is the gift itself. When you in the giving we receive, right?
Right.
We grew up, in the Bay Area. We were both Giants and Niners fans. They both used to play at Candlestick Park, and I had the sign made of Candlestick Park, and there was the silhouette of the football player and the baseball player, and that was the street sign. Now that won't exist anymore because so many of our ballparks and our stadiums aren't dual usage stadiums. But that goes back to our childhood, and he lives in Washington D.C. now, and that sign is proudly hanging, right, in his living room. His daughters found the place for that. But I think about the meaningful gift. It came out of love and time and reflection. So maybe that's one of our challenges for our listeners, as you kind of framed this so well, when we're trying to give a gift. How can we make it meaningful? Well, spend some time in prayer on it. Think about this person, right?
Okay, and I love that you still call it Candlestick Park, because I do too. That clearly shows an age and the generation where we were really following sports, really impressionable.
Well, it's gone now. It's imploded.
I know.
It's not there, but yes, in spirit, it is definitely there. Thank you for appreciating it.
I definitely do.
Yeah. So, I'm at St. Francis High School in Mountain View. Haley, I think, did you have a cousin that went to St. Francis?
I had 2 cousins who went to St. Francis, yes, many years ago. But I've known about St. Francis my whole life. So, yeah, when you said you were taking that job there, I thought, I know that school.
Yeah, it's a great community. It's a Holy Cross school, like University of Notre Dame, and it definitely feels like that sense of family. We had, in celebration of family, we did have a Thanksgiving Mass. So we were able to have that outside on Friday. And the homily, the gospel reading that day was not the daily reading. So if folks want to get the reading, but it's the Jesus who cures the lepers, Matthew 8, 1-4. And in those he cures, right, their lives are changed. They're forever changed. Cures 10 of them, and they are free. I mean, these are people who've been shunned by society. They are excluded. And by their cure, they are included, right? They are liberated. And I think that's just such a great image of thinking of Christ, right? As someone who can cure and heal and liberate. But in their gratitude, only one of the 10 came back to say, I mean, not their gratitude, in their excitement. They probably went and joined their families, whoever it was. We don't know that part of the story. What we do know is that only one came back to say thank you. And that's 10%, right? And I think that's a great challenge, but I also think that's a great image for us, is like, would I be that one who would return to the Lord to say thank you? I don't know the answer to that question. I hope I would, but I have often challenged my students, really be that 10%. Be the one who goes back to say thank you. And, in my time of teaching, I think of my students who've been so, they've really been able to say thank you. They've done that. And one in particular, he always made a point of saying thank you. And I got a note when he graduated from his parents, and they just thanked all their teachers for teaching their 2 sons. And I thought, this is a family practice. They always say the apple doesn't fall off the tree. What a great way to think of a family, as someone who is that 10% who practices gratitude. So
that is awesome.
So, for our final section, the melting pot, should we move into our final piece here?
Yes.
That, our bread is in the cheese, it's boiling. So, Haley, I just, you came up with our description. What is your cheesy story of the week?
Our cheesy story of the week, because really that's the best part of the fondue. So for me, I have 2 boys, one at 18, a freshman in college, and 16, a junior in high school. And my cheesy story of the week is just this cheesy smile I had when my son came home from school. He has been gone for 4 months. We didn't know if they were going to be able to stay at school for 4 months. So for us, I was very grateful that he was there the whole time, but I was even more grateful when he came home. And he was excited to see us. He was excited to see the dogs for sure. But what I really think he was excited for, and what was really neat for me, was seeing him connect with, really his closest friend since he was 4 years old. And there's just such a unique shared friendship there. And to see them have grown together from these little boys into these mature, oftentimes silly, but very thoughtful young men, and to listen to their dialogue about the experiences that they both had as they were away, and the very real experiences they had dealing with COVID, and friends who had COVID, and unfortunately in my son's situation, some students who had died on campus, very real world issues. And to listen to them talk in appreciation and sharing very heartfelt sentiments just was a huge blessing for me. I was very grateful and just sat and listened with a smile on my face that thought, okay, you know what? We've done something right here. And whether it is the Holy Spirit who has worked through our parenting, it was really neat to see. One of the greatest gifts I think we can give our children are the gifts of friendship, and friendships that will last long beyond us as parents. And so for me, that was my cheesy moment of the week. One, my son coming home, and just two, seeing how grateful he was to have been at school and to also come home and see his friends.
I love that, Elie. One of my favorite quotes by Elie Wiesel is, "Friendship is the jewel of life." And for you just to behold that and appreciate that. Friends really enrich our lives, don't they? We get to choose our friends. Sometimes they choose us, I think.
Right.
So I think that leads to kind of my cheesy story of the week. This might sound funny. My cheesy story of the week, I'm really grateful for redheads. And I'll give a context for this. So I've always had roommates. I lived in San Francisco. When I first moved into San Francisco, I had two roommates. And I don't know many listeners have had this. Actually, one of my roommates, we became better friends once she moved out. It wasn't, our lives were just really busy when we were living together, but we have stayed friends, and she's a redhead and really identifies as a redhead. And I mentioned that because she said when she was a child, it was confusing to her when she had to draw like her family self-portrait. Do I use orange? Do I use red for the crayon? And I just thought it was a great image. But yesterday I played golf with these two men. They were both redheads, and really striking. One had a red beard and red hair. And I'm a big baseball fan, and I'm a Giants fan. And one of the spiritual leader, one of the star players for the Dodgers, is a redhead. His name is Justin Turner, and it's a striking red beard and hair. And I kept wanting to call this golfer Justin, and his name was not Justin, it was Wade. But it was funny because it's just a striking, sense of self-identity. So I'm grateful for Erin and how she brought me into the culture of redheads. I joke with other redheads, is there a secret handshake among you all? As someone who's Irish too, there's a lot of family members who have red hair. So that's my cheesy kind of insight for the week.
Well, and what a thing to be grateful for, right? Is recognizing, the gift that your friends and your roommate had brought to your life. And, as we move through this week, I think that's our challenge to ourselves. That's our challenge, to our listeners, to our friends is, let's find that meaningful gift. Let's find, something to be grateful for. And let's make it meaningful and not worry about the quantity, but really focus on the quality, and to be that 10%, let's make sure that we take the time to say thank you, for something that we've been given, or for something that someone does, all the time, more than 10% of the time. Do we want to be that 10% that goes back? And, as we move into, next week, we'll start Advent, and there is a whole host of built-in themes that we'll have. The first Sunday of Advent, we'll talk about hope, but just a lot that goes around the Christmas season and the holiday season that will be really fun to unpack in a faith-filled, fondue, cheesy way. But really this week, I am so grateful to start this. I'm so grateful to be able to talk to you, Anne, all the time, more than we used to. This will be fun. There are so many times during the week where I think, oh, Anne and I need to talk about this on our podcast. So I look forward to all those topics, and I look forward to everything that I am grateful for that I don't even know is going to come about this week. So Anne, what are your plans for Thanksgiving? I'm home, and it'll be us. but certainly a lot to be thankful for, even though it looks a little different and is a lot smaller of a gathering.
Yeah. Haley, I don't have a huge family, but I do always say I have a huge family through Notre Dame. The Irish usually come to town or to California. So the West Coast is, you grew up in Arizona, but it's a treat when they come to your kind of time zone or location. They're not here. They'll be in North Carolina this Friday.
Right.
So they would have been at USC this year, and I go down to that game about half the time. So I'll still, it's nice to be with you. I know you from the Notre Dame family, so we'll pray for each other. And I'll be with my family and my parents who are in the East Bay. They have, the table is set. It'll be my parents and my sister and I. And it's set with pumpkins and still kind of fall decor. Okay, but Haley, the other parts of the house, the holiday, decorations have creeped in. And so my niece and I had a conversation about this. I need to know, are you a Christmas or holiday purist? Meaning, like, do you hold off on holiday music, movies, and decor until after Thanksgiving? Now, I know, like, before our generation, there were people who were Christmassy. That's not the conversation. Like, I'm going to use Thanksgiving as the dividing line. Where are you on that proverbial line in the sand?
We are a Thanksgiving night decorating family. So we will clean the dishes and pull out the Christmas bins. And when we wake up Friday morning, Christmas will have arrived at our house. So we are clearly post Thanksgiving, but just barely. We sometimes haven't even had pie. If we need to digest food, we'll start decorating. But no, we decorate Christmas Thanksgiving night, and always have and always will.
What a great tradition. That's a great ritual. I like that. Yeah, this year has been, I'm a purist. I'm the day after. I would be open to Thanksgiving night, but I felt the love kind of creep in a little bit earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't watched any Hallmark movies yet. There has been a little bit of Vince Guaraldi Christmas. I have to admit, the Charlie Brown soundtrack. I played it a couple times, but I'm holding out. So end of this week.
So well, and anything that makes us bring us a little joy to our life, a little happier this year, I am all for. We do have some Christmas lights that have been up in our house since March, just because we smile when we turn them on. So this year, all is forgiven, but certainly Thanksgiving night. By the time we meet again on the podcast, it will be Christmas in our house. So we look forward to that.
Yes. Okay, well, thanks for our time together. For all that we've been able to kind of cook up during our first episode. Look forward to more nourishment and a fondue to come.
Sounds great. Happy Thanksgiving.
You too. To your family as well.